You are tuning in to the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast.
This show is dedicated to the memory of my big sister Rebecca, a fan of all things pop culture, particularly of the people, places, and things that defined the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Welcome aboard this pop culture time machine. I'm Amy Lewis. This is episode number 116, a look back on Calvin and Hobbes, featuring my guest spot on the His and Hers Gen X podcast. In this episode, I was lucky enough to be invited by fellow pop culture lovers and podcast hosts, Chad and Cristina. They host the His and Hers Gen X podcast. They are just another example of why the podcast community is so wonderful, specifically the pop culture genre, if you will. They have an awesome show that touches on a ton of topics that listeners to the show would be interested in, and they're just really nice people. I'll make sure to link their show, social media links, etc. in the show notes. With that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy my guest spot on the His and Hers Gen X podcast.
Hey, welcome to our His and Hers Gen X podcast with me, Chad and Cristina.
Yep.
And we have a special guest, Amy Lewis. How you doing?
Tis I. I am doing well. How are you two doing?
Great. What's the name of your show? Pop Culture Retrospective?
Yes, good job.
Okay.
A lot of people have a hard time getting that full pronunciation the first go around, so it's kind of a long one. So yes, Pop Culture Retrospective.
I know it's funny because when we started our show, we were trying to keep it like the name simple.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to call it Reminiscing with Strangers, which is kind of like what we're doing on this episode.
Yes.
I wanted to call it, I guess,
Gen X
Happy Hour, so we could just have a drink while we were doing it. But that's already
Yeah.
been taken, and they're doing very well, so
Yeah.
we couldn't do that.
Yep.
So yeah, we went through a few reiterations of the name, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So can you tell our viewers and listeners about your show?
Sure. So I am Amy Lewis, and yes, host the Pop Culture Retrospective podcast. And I started the show in May of 2020 because I've always been very into pop culture and remember things from my childhood and adolescence that most people don't really remember or care to remember. But also because I unfortunately lost my older sister, Rebecca, very tragically. She struggled with significant mental health issues for a vast majority of her life. And so sort of as a way of coping with that unfortunate loss, I decided that instead of having a podcast about mental health or something like that, I've always been very passionate about pop culture. My sister was very passionate about pop culture. It was something that we constantly spoke about into our adulthood and all the silly stuff that we watched and listened to and the music that we had and the dolls that we had, the toys that we collected. So I thought maybe I could sort of relive fun, positive, lighthearted memories from that era. Because my sister was definitely, certified Gen X, falls into that demographic, and I'm on the very cusp of that. Sometimes people call it geriatric millennial or zennial. So I feel like I can relate to a lot of things that Gen Xers grew up with because I'm kind of on the tail end of that. And I can also relate to some millennial stuff, not all of it. Some of it's like way after my time, but a lot of it I remember too. So, anyways, long story short, the podcast was sort of born out of grief, but it was kind of taking something that was really horrible and awful and turning it into something really positive. And so now here I am 5.5 years later, and it's been a really fun, therapeutic process. And I've gotten the chance to meet some incredible people that I would not have met had I not started the podcast. So
cool.
Yeah. I think that's part of it too, though, is just that's the nostalgia of it, is just going back to a time when everything was simple and the memories are there.
Yeah.
So I think that's why we like it so much.
We're going to do a separate episode where Amy and me and Chris kind of interview each other about our shows and all that.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that another time. But so this episode, we're talking about Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
This is our first non-movie review episode.
Yep.
Wow.
So this is going to be new to us.
How do you feel? How do you feel about that? Do you feel, is this, intimidating? How does it feel to be branching doing a little different.
We wanted to do this like months ago, but it was just kind of like, like the holidays coming up. So we had to do like Halloween themed movies and then
Sure.
Christmas themed movies. And, like everything had a theme to it, basically.
It's like starting a new job where you're thinking, okay, we have to think of a new way to do it. So it is kind of branching out a little bit.
It's funny. Yeah. Cause like this show, it was kind of meant to be like, it was inspired. Do you ever watch, well, it's actually not a video show. It's an audio podcast, The Retroist.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, that was one of the first pop culture podcasts I got into.
Yeah, I think he started like 2008 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that was like one of the inspirations for this show, and I was like, we're gonna, because like he does like movies, video games, food,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, we just always did movies. So we said for like our New Year's resolution was like, okay, we're gonna do something other than movies.
Sure.
So, Calvin and Hobbes. This was one of my favorite comics as a kid, and my first job, if you call it a job, is I was a paper boy starting in 6th grade.
Nice.
So, I got up early, delivered the papers, came home and like was eating breakfast and would read the funny pages over breakfast.
Yeah.
And just always loved Calvin and Hobbes. And like the only way to like these collected books, like there's a bunch of them.
Yes.
Like, this is the only way, like if you had like a Calvin and Hobbes fix, was either you had to clip them out of the newspaper or buy these books from the bookstore.
They weren't hard copied when I had one, though. It was it's so worn out from being just a soft copy of it.
Yeah.
So that one holds up a lot better.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess we'll kind of go around the room. Like, what's your, we'll start with Amy because she's the guest. Like, what's your earliest memories of this comic?
Yeah. So it was interesting because I don't think that Calvin and Hobbes ran in any of my newspapers growing up. I don't think I meant to look it up, but I grew up outside of Chicago, so I don't recollect it being in the Chicago Tribune at all.
Really?
However,
wow.
Which is really unusual, but like Garfield and Peanuts and stuff like that, of course that was huge, and I'm sure we'll talk about why that was so huge too. But I think for me it wasn't in the newspapers, but I distinctly remember I must have come across the books at the library or something like that, because I remember that I had a Calvin and Hobbes book of comics, and it was Yukon Ho. And I don't know where that book ended up, probably donated when I moved went off to college or something like that. Yeah. But I certainly remember liking the comic strips because we loved, like I said, Garfield and Peanuts. And I'm a huge Dennis the Menace fan and loved those comics growing up. So I don't think Calvin and Hobbes was as prominent on my radar just because it wasn't in our newspaper for whatever reason. But certainly when I did come across it, I really enjoyed it because I really enjoyed like little boys being silly kind of characters as I was growing up.
Clearly,
So I really, really enjoyed it, but just there wasn't as many opportunities to kind of like access it compared to some of the other kind of notable comic strips of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Chris, what's like your earliest memories?
So it did run in the Daytona Beach News Journal. And I do remember my father got it. So I just read the funnies every morning, I think. And then I would read the big pages and the color pages on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I remember Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side. Do you remember The Far Side? It was like a morbid comic that they ran.
Yeah.
Those two stuck in my mind for just being really quirky and different.
Yeah.
And then the standard ones, but this one really stuck out to me. Plus, they put out the books.
Yeah, you don't always kind of amazed me, even as a kid, is that this like was a kind of gender neutral comic, because you would think that it would only apply to boys because it's Calvin,
right?
And like the only female character is like his mom and his next door neighbor Susie,
right?
And he's like always, arguing with her, like how little kids do,
right?
And it's interesting. So like, what was the appeal to the comic? Like, I don't know, maybe was it just because like we're kids and we didn't really have like these gender norm things going, or like it was legit funny to you? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was just like the idea of a stuffed animal that comes to life is something that certainly appealed to me, because I feel like there was a lot of other I don't know if like TV shows or movies where that was kind of like part of the shtick. So I think that really appealed to me because I always loved that kind of idea. And that's why I really ended up loving Toy Story when I was a teenager, just that whole concept of like your toys coming to life and nobody else knows. I think I really enjoyed. And I think just kind of like the sarcasm and the adventures was a huge appeal to me too, because I definitely had a very vivid imagination, as did my sister, and just playing pretend whatever, like going in time machines, like they, he often does in the comics. So I think the plot line really appealed to me as a kid.
Yeah.
So it never like bugged you, or like maybe not bugged is the right word, but just like it didn't seem weird that you like this comic about a boy.
No.
Yeah.
That's kind of like how.
So. It was like my whole thing.
weird.
I was such a, I always say that this is not, I mean, this is like in a good way. I know people don't use this term anymore, but I was a huge tomboy growing up. And I say that as like a term of endearment, but I really loved like little boys that did, ran around and rolled down the hill in their wagon and like got, dirty and dug in the dirt and played with dinosaurs and rode their bikes and fell off and whatever. That was, I felt like I could relate to those characters a lot more as a kid. So, and thankfully my parents were very supportive of me kind of not being like a stereotypical girl growing up. So for me, it didn't bother me. I was just like, oh, this kid is cool and I want to read. I like to read the comics though.
It didn't bother me. I feel like it's genderless and timeless because Calvin and Hobbes, everybody in my family read it. My sister, my parents loved it. So they loved it for different reasons.
I think my parents read it. I don't think they read it. I don't think they read any funny pages.
But I don't think Calvin and Hobbes either was something I discussed with friends when I was a kid either. So I wouldn't go to school and talk about it. But it was kind of a thing that we kept within our family. And then when I got older, I started talking more about it and realized a lot of people my age were reading it too.
Yeah.
Which I kind of wonder if we were like we were probably like the last generation of people to read funnies, right?
Yeah. There's still like there's web pages where you can subscribe. You make your own daily email digest. Like you just check off which comics you want and they email them to you.
Yeah.
And I did that a couple years ago. And then like after like a month, I had to unsubscribe because like it wasn't nearly as funny as they used to be as a kid. And like a lot of them are like, anything like post, like in 21st century, like everybody's got like an agenda or a political message or something. It's like, no, I'm reading the funnies because I want to laugh. I don't want like your hot take on hot button issues.
Right. Yeah. It's very, certainly more timeless before.
You see funnies in the opinion pieces that are political, but that's what
but they're on the op-ed page.
I don't even know. I guess there's still funny pages in the newspaper, right? But
I haven't read an actual physical newspaper in years and years.
Yeah. So we were probably the last generation of kids to really read the funnies. So that could be why we are attached to these.
Anyways, getting back to Calvin Hobbes. So like there was this documentary. There's tons of YouTube videos about it and all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's like a legit documentary about 10, 15 years ago. And it doesn't really have like a thesis though. It's kind of like rambling. And the guy, at one point he says Calvin is kind of like a hybrid of like Charlie Brown and Bart Simpson. Which I kind of agree with because he has like that kind of antisocial, like he doesn't fit in like Charlie Brown, although Charlie Brown actually has tons of friends if you think about it.
It's true.
And he's also this rambunctious troublemaker. He's like constant, but he's not like Cartman or Nelson Muntz or something. Like he's not like a bully.
Right.
But he does get bullied himself.
Right. Yeah.
So, Calvin does.
Yeah. Like Calvin doesn't really, I guess you could say he kind of bullies Susie, but like whenever he does, he always feels bad about it. And he ends up making up with her.
Isn't that the big kid though that bullies Calvin?
Oh, Mo. Yeah.
Mo. Yeah. Because did Calvin actually have any friends? Do you remember if Calvin had friends?
I guess Susie is like pretty much his only human friend.
Yeah. That's the only one that I can remember. Yeah.
That explains why he has a friend in a stuffed animal.
Yeah. He doesn't really have any male, I was going to say boyfriends, but
he doesn't have friends, period. Jesse.
Yeah.
Except Susie Durkins.
Yeah. But it's nice that he kind of like doesn't apologize for it. It's just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
You know, he doesn't like beat himself up over it, which I think is again part of the appeal is that it kind of like made it okay to be sort of a loner and to be sort of imaginative, which is
Yeah.
I think another angle of why it was so appealing to such a broad audience.
Yeah, I never made that connection before, but yeah, that's part of it too. And
Yeah.
he was just a philosophical kid. I mean, there's a lot of
Yes.
stuff that went over my head reading this when I was a
Yeah.
kid that I now read as an adult, and I'm
Definitely.
clicking for me, his point of view.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you can tell this comic inspired South Park
Hmm.
and The Simpsons, how like they're kids, but they have like the opinions of like college students or like
Yes.
adults. Like he has like these nuanced like on
Yeah, insanely.
Hmm.
I can tell Cartman from South Park is like partially inspired by Calvin, but like Cartman's like way more cynical and mean and
Yeah,
a jerk ass, you know?
he's
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
and Calvin's not mean.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I think
anyway.
any modern day animated or computer animated, however, I mean, I think most of them, I'm sure, are somehow loosely inspired by Calvin and Hobbes for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever I read the comics, when I still read the comics,
Mhm.
like, do you have like an inner monologue where you actually hear each character's voice, like as? Because I always hear Calvin as kind of like basically like Charlie Brown from like those '60s specials, but
Yeah.
kind of like again, kind of like Charlie Brown / Bart Simpson, or kind of like a more confident Butters from South Park.
Yeah.
And I always heard Hobbes as kind of like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, but not as goofy. Like if Tigger was talking seriously.
Yeah.
Did you have like a voice that you? How would you describe it?
That's a good question.
So there was a cartoon. I can't remember if it was like on social media somewhere or if it was on YouTube back in the day. Do you know what I'm talking about? Somebody made a cartoon.
That could be a million things. Can you be more
It was
specific?
like, it was more 3D, and it was on, I don't know, E-Bombs World or something back in the day. Anyway, the voice that they had for Calvin, I immediately thought that's not the right voice. Like I do when I read a book and I see a movie of it.
Yeah.
I can't really explain what his voice sounds like,
Well,
but
there was
they got it completely wrong for me.
Yeah, there was a Robot Chicken Calvin and Hobbes sketch. Maybe that's what you were thinking of.
Mm-mm. It was something else, but yeah, that was weird too.
How did you hear Calvin and Hobbes?
I think I couldn't like quite picture it, and I think it's because I listened to the book that was Looking for Calvin and Hobbes so many times, just talking about how Bill Watterson was so anti commercializing the comic strip that I almost like couldn't accept sort of thinking of what that voice would sound like, because it would probably never have been correct, would have never lived up to like what people wanted to. So I feel like I almost couldn't picture it, just because knowing that backstory behind it, it was kind of hard for me to envision what that would look like. But your description, I think, Chad, that does actually, I could see that like why that would make sense. It's just, I think because he was so, anti like blowing this into some big, money, money grab thing, that it's like, I think people probably would have complained that the, voices weren't correct, or, find somebody else. So I think it'd be a hard one to nail down.
Yeah. So everything was fan made.
Yeah.
Whenever I read the strip and his parents are talking, I hear Randy and Stan Marsh's parents from South Park.
Yeah, but like
Randy and Sharon. I think like Randy is his dad and Sharon is his mom. Like at least the voices, not their personalities.
Yeah.
His mom is always portrayed as yelling in the comics. Like she's always mad.
Yeah.
So I just always picture a woman yelling the entire time.
I know his mom kind of reminds me. That's how my mom was when we were all little. Like just really irritated.
She's probably very tired and
working, coming home, cooking, and then
right.
Like
I
just read this book.
Yeah,
the last week or two, and like there's kind of like this is the first book in the series, and so this is like the early days of the strip.
Yeah,
and it's kind of this running joke where the parents, which is funny, they never have a name the entire series. They just address each other as dear or honey.
Yeah,
did you ever notice that?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
It's kind of like a sitcom kind of joke of like, did you see what your son did? And he, like, the dad would be like, well, why is he my son when he gets in trouble? And it's always like, oh, I told you like, there's like these like kind of like birth control kind of jokes, like where they regret having kids. And it's kind of like, it really flirts that line between like South Park dark, but like corny sitcom-y. You know what I'm
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Calvin always saying something to the dad about like, oh, I put an ad in the newspaper for a new dad and they have to be, really patient and flexible. And there's definitely such a adult sense of humor. And as far as I could tell, I don't think that I couldn't find any information that indicated whether or not Bill Watterson was a parent. I don't know. I'm not aware of him
he had
having kids.
I couldn't find any information on it.
I think you would have to have
So-
kids to be able to write a child like that well.
Yeah.
Like no matter what year it is, you have to know how like little kids act.
Right.
Also, he was writing it from an adult perspective too. So, like looking at it now, it's like Calvin was clearly written from an adult perspective. I mean, like he acts like an adult, just the way he speaks. So maybe he didn't have kids, but there's like nothing on his situation at all. He's very, very private.
Right.
Yeah, he's like the modern day.
Yeah, I'm just surprised he didn't like that. Because if he didn't have children, I mean, he certainly did a great job tapping into kind of what parents are thinking. When their kids are doing things that they shouldn't, and also just tapping into like a kid's imagination, pretty well, very sophisticated imagination, but certainly a relatable character to children. So if he didn't have kids or wasn't closely connected to kids, he certainly made it seem like he was because he just wrote it so well.
Yeah.
Christina was saying a few days ago that, like, I don't know if you were joking or if you were serious, or you said you didn't think his parents were ready to be parents.
Yeah, I did.
Like, they didn't strike me as like they were like, shotgun wedding, like late teens, early 20s, like parents. Like they seemed like they were in their late 30s at least, or early 40s.
They were older parents.
Right.
Amy, did you get that vibe like they weren't ready to be parents, or is it just it's just a running joke for the sake of a joke,
Yeah, I think, not ready to be parents, and just like always caught off guard by something that he does, or like irritated, like it's the first time something like that happened, which which is pretty hysterical too. Just again, because I have just two kids that are just very much a handful. So, I've got like Calvin times like 1,000. But they always seem like, they're not ready, or like, irritated, or they were in the middle of doing something. And it's like, well, why are you like even asking me that question? Like, I'm clearly reading my newspaper. Like, what are you doing? So they weren't the like, get on their hands and knees and play kind of parents by any means. So I think that added an interesting dynamic to the comics.
Yeah, it's funny.
Sure.
There's a few strips where they actually show them like playing with like they show his mom. I think it was like a Sunday strip where she's playing with him, like throwing him around, and like she's all out of breath and she like falls asleep. She's so tired. And then one of my favorite ones, I wish I could find it. It's because there's like a running joke through the whole like 10 years is that for some reason his dad would put him to bed, and his dad's always reading him bedtime stories, and like he would like there's a few where like he scared Calvin, like he reached his hand up through his shirt. And he's like, I'll tell you a scary story.
Yeah.
It's like that's like one of the few times where like they like really love. Not that they hate him. It's just I never got that vibe. Like they legit dislike. I always thought like they legit love their son. It's just
of course
these, that kid. It's like a running. It's very Simpsons. Like it's almost like a Homer and Bart dynamic. The way Calvin and his dad are. Except
right.
Calvin's dad doesn't strangle him.
Right. Or donut factory.
So from a parent's perspective, is Calvin a normal kid, or is he exceptional? Is he gifted?
I think he very well could be. I mean, it just his vocabulary and awareness of kind of the world around him and kind of how it works. I mean, I think is certainly pretty impressive. And and it's always been my experience that some of the kids who kind of cause the most ruckus or have the most going on are some of the smartest kids. One of my youngest son has some difficulties, but he is so smart and loves to read, and so he'll go off on a 10-minute tangent about rocks or axolotls and how they can grow back body parts, and just very elaborate all this information that I had no awareness of.
Right.
So I think Calvin's like a little bit of both. He's kind of got that childhood
Little
rambunctiousness.
boys. I don't know when it started. I remember it from when I was in kindergarten, but it had to be at least starting in the 80s, maybe if not decades sooner. So little boys, like probably kindergarten through third grade, love dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
I don't know when that trend started, but I definitely remember when I was like that small, being obsessed with dinosaurs.
Little girls too.
Yep, same with me.
Dinosaurs. Yeah, I think
really?
it's just like a thing among kids. Yeah.
Yes.
I thought it was more of a boy thing.
No.
I don't remember any girls being like obsessed. Like you could actually like some kid like would just like, oh yeah, that's a stegosaurus, that's a tyrannosaurus. They can name like all the different dinosaur species.
I had a dinosaur T-shirt that I got at the local craft fair, and I liked it so much that we went back but after like a year or two, and I got the same one in a bigger size because I had to have it. And to this day, I still have that shirt. My son wore it when he was little, and on my to-do list, which is like never going to happen, but I'm going to make like a quilt of all my favorite like old T-shirts, and that's going to be one of them. And it's all Brachiosauruses, because I don't think it's not Brontosaurus anymore. That in the name change, it's like Brachiosaurus or something now. Anyways, I was a dinosaur nerd for big time when I was in elementary school, and kind of as an adult. I have a dinosaur lunchbox actually.
If you went to Epcot when you were a kid, they had a ride there called it was the science ride,
Universe of Energy.
Yes, that had the dinosaur part, and I would sit through the entire thing just waiting for that dinosaur part. I get so stoked for it. So I was obsessed with them too.
Yeah,
I know. Too bad. Like in Calvin and Hobbes, they don't really like address like the real world that much. Although, like,
which is good.
Reading the first book, like I think it started in 85. There's like a few points he says like they don't have like a VCR. And he wanted to like, rent a VCR, rent movies, and there's like this running joke where they must not have cable either. Or maybe they do have cable, because there's always this running joke of like, oh, sororities girls versus the monster. You remember that?
He's watching?
Yeah, but like it's like Hobbes reading the paper and he's like, oh, sorority girls versus the blob is on.
Okay, now,
It's so something Hobbes. Like that. Not you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, subtle, and I think that's part of why the broad appeals, because it is sort of timeless, and that's why, not that this is the same thing, but like why Friends still continues to be such a popular show to this day is because they didn't reference a lot of current news, current music. I mean, it kind of sometimes came into play, but wasn't a big deal. So you could watch that show now, and if you're 20, they're not going to be making a bunch of references to politicians that you don't know who they're talking about, or music that you've never heard of. And that's why it has such a long staying power, is because it's not really locked in time. And I think that's why you can sit and read Calvin and Hobbes and not feel like you're reading a comic from, 1990, which may not appeal to some people. It's just very, very timeless when you don't do a ton of those references.
Yeah, it doesn't date itself.
Right.
Yeah, that's like
unlike some things like Aladdin, which dates itself.
Or like we were in that documentary, they interview the guy that does Bloom County, and like that's like it's like this running political cartoon, like, and it's always like of the absolute day and time political kind of thing, which is like the complete opposite. But one thing I did like and appreciate about Calvin and Hobbes, Amy's from the North. Christina probably can't appreciate. She grew up in Florida, and something I noticed as a kid, and I still notice now, is that it takes place over all 4 seasons of the year.
Yeah,
and so it's like when it's Christmas, it's snowing out. When it's spring, they actually show like the snow melting. In the summer, they make jokes that it's hot.
Yeah,
in the autumn, they had the leaves changing. Yeah. Did you notice that, Amy? Or
and I think again, I keep saying I keep saying this like a broken record, but I think again that's just like part of the appeal too. Is seeing the different seasons, and I mean, who wouldn't want to like have a snowball fight with their stuffed tiger that comes to life? I think it just adds to more storylines, more plot lines, making it more interesting. And I think another reason why Calvin and Hobbes is so amazing, and why I think I liked it as a kid too, is the artwork is just so incredible and so well done and so interesting to look at, that the winter scenes are beautiful. I mean, they're just the illustrations are just unbelievable that I'm glad that it, took place in all those seasons because it, it's such unique artistry. I mean, like Garfield is great, but like I don't think a Garfield winter scene is as unique or as compelling as a Calvin Hobbes winter scene. And this is coming from somebody who can't draw anything. So I'm not really one. I shouldn't judge, but his illustrations are just outstanding.
They talk about that in the documentary, like his watercolors, like doesn't really do it justice, but like his the Sundays, like he did everything, like the pencils, the inks, the watercolors.
Yeah,
I think he did a lettering himself too.
I think
he
so.
had any assistants.
Yeah.
The amount of time that must have taken to do all of that by hand and come up with the ideas to even do it in the first place is it's brilliance, because how do you maintain that?
Oh yeah, like last week when we were watching the documentary, I remember like when I was a kid, I was wondering like how long did it take a comic book or comic strip artist to did they clock in like on a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 kind of job? Like they probably had like a separate room in their house they were drawing.
Right.
But like did it take him 8 hours to make, one day's worth of work, or could like he crank out like a month's worth of strips in a day or a week? Because I remember that as a kid thinking that would be an awesome job to have. You could like work like 2 or 3 days a month and then take the rest of the month off and then just come back and draw some more.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, based on what I was learning about Bill Watterson, I'm guessing that he probably took him a long time, because it sounds like he did a lot of like research for the comic strip to kind of figure out different storylines that he wanted to have, and was such a perfectionist and wanting the illustration to be just right. And I think again, every comic that you read of his, they're all like a decent story. It's not like, there's like some TV shows where, man, season 7 was great, but my God, those first 3 seasons just, were terrible.
Right.
I think in this comic, they're all, decently interesting enough to read for most people that I think it's clear that he spent probably more time than most people on the storylines, because he wasn't like just going to do anything like halfway. He was going to give it like 100%. So
I'm willing to bet this probably consumed his entire life for the time that he did it, especially when the books were being made and he was really at his peak. So
yeah,
it's no wonder that he tapped out early when you think about it, because he didn't do it for an extremely long time.
I think it was like 10 years to the day.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, 10 years. Yep.
So he probably devoted 24/7 to this. And after 10 years, he's like, okay, I got to focus on my life. I'm out of it.
I know. It's like, what has he been doing? Something I've always wondered is like, what has he been doing since then? Like, is he just living off residuals for the last 30 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like he has, he's had purchased, modest homes. And I mean, the books alone, the book that I was listening to is from, I think like 2009. And he was saying that the books had sold over like 30 million copies. And that's,
so even if he got $1 ago, still...
right. And that's exactly what I was saying. I was like, oh my God, even if he got, like a very small amount from
when I was
those
reading
books.
up on him, he he didn't sell out in a traditional sense. There was no marketing or anything like that. But with syndication and the books and other,
there's like next to no merchandise.
No, but he still made estimated between $100 and $150 million. So he still made a ton of money, but he never sold the product out. So it's impressive.
Yeah, like even if I was that rich though, I'd still need something to do. Like I couldn't just wake up every day and like watch TV and
Yeah.
I would need something to do.
Yeah.
Maybe ghostwriting or something.
I just thought like
fun.
like maybe he started another strip under like a pseudonym or something. I don't know.
Maybe
that would have been cool.
Yeah, when he's pretty young. I mean, I think he's like 68, which I was thinking like, oh, when I first started, I'm like, oh, maybe he's like deceased now. He must be like 100 years old. Like he's younger than my parents are.
He's younger than my parents too. I was surprised.
Yeah, by a bit.
I think.
Yeah. And I think he does a lot of painting now. And was with like his father. At the time, which that may not be the unfortunate case anymore, but I think he was doing still doing like artwork and did like painting really heavily. But yeah, very, very, very secretive. Which the more that I learned about him, the more it really made sense, because I mean, the things that have been done with some famous comic strip characters are just, ridiculous what they've ended up on, and really
Yeah.
kind of cheapens things, for lack of a better term. And so I appreciate his commitment to like the artistry and the quality, and not having things just people do make the characters appear on weird things just to make money. That was certainly not his motivation, which is commendable.
Did you watch that video from Phil Edwards about the peeing Calvin?
Yes.
Because basically, like, the reason those exist is because there was no Calvin and Hobbes merch.
Yes.
And they said like they didn't. So I forget exactly, but it was like, because they weren't making money off the merch.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't afford lawyers to go after every Tom, Dick, and Harry making bootleg peeing Calvin stickers.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it was like if you're not using the copyright or whatever, like, well, I mean, it's not like he abandoned the trademark or whatever. It'll be interesting. It probably won't happen in our lifetimes, but I mean, at some point, Calvin and Hobbes will become public domain, probably like 2080. Must be 2080. Yeah. And I'll be, I mean, by then, I mean, it's such a long ways away, but I'll be curious to see like when, we could do a whole show about when characters enter the public domain, like Mickey Mouse sort of is in the public domain.
Yes.
And like Batman, Superman, all those superheroes are going to be in the public domain, like within our lifetimes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And how Mickey Mouse is illustrated now is, as a big Disney historian, Disney geek, former cast member, what those characters look like now is horrendous.
Yeah.
That I think Walt Disney would be rolling in his grave, or his frozen body under Disneyland, whatever. That how they look now, like they all have like liver disease, and their eyes are it's awful, or kidney disease. I mean, it's so bad, but that's for another time.
No, he'd be rolling in his grave, period, over the state of Disney right now.
So disrespectful. Yeah, the illustrations are awful.
It's kind of funny. Like, again, we could do a whole separate podcast on this. Is like with Disney though, it's like kids today didn't grow up with Mickey Mouse, so it's like I'm still kind of amazed that kids have this fascination with Disneyland, but it's like they have no idea who Mickey Mouse is. Like, they're not making new Mickey Mouse cartoons or movies, as far as I know.
No.
But like, I guess are they going to Disneyland just for like the Star Wars and Marvel stuff?
Oh, there's also Toy Story. There's also Toy Story, which kids know. There's Avatar. There's...
All right, so, Amy, you have kids. Do they have you shown them like the classic Disneys, like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Black Cauldron?
Some of them, yes. My oldest son is on the autism spectrum and has a lot of sensory challenges, so he gets very overwhelmed and scared very easily. So a lot of the Disney movies, actually, we can't show them because there's like a lot of dark parts of it. The first few minutes of Bambi, the first few minutes of Finding Nemo. A lot of them are just have too many dark, suspenseful moments, or anticipation of something bad is going to happen that he's really uncomfortable with. But my youngest son does. So we've watched a lot of classic movies, and a lot of like the Pixar movies I enjoy a lot too. I think even a little bit more than some of the Disney movies, traditional Disney animated movies. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We have to kind of like pick and choose pretty carefully with what we watch. But like some of it in hindsight, it's like, I don't think I want to watch that with them. Like, Snow White, I mean, that like Wicked Witch is really creepy and like wants to kill her, like wants to poison her with an apple. It's like, and I'm not like a helicopter parent per se, but I do have to supervise my kids a lot because of what their needs are different than most children's. But a lot of them are just, it's like, Lion King, like the dad gets trampled to death. I don't really think I want to watch that tonight.
Traumatizing. It's traumatizing.
It's probably you don't notice that as a kid. Like, to me, like I saw like Snow White, all those movies, and they never scared me. Like,
me, right.
Just, like,
I didn't even think about. Didn't even cross my mind. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, I saw Lion King in the theater with my dad, and the dad gets like trampled. Which in hindsight, I'm like, oh my god, that's so.
I cried during the Lion King. I was in the theater crying every single time I saw it over that scene.
Did you ever see Secret of Nim?
Yes. I remember that.
First episodes.
Yeah. I haven't seen it since. I mean, I was a little kid, so I
It's
can't remember it, but I
holds
think
up
they had the
very
books
it's
here.
worth
well.
you
It's,
just
it
you can
holds
just
up
put it
really
on
well.
mute and just to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth
Yeah.
rewatching, I think.
Anyway, we're getting like way
Yeah.
off topic. We'll get back to Calvin and Hobbes. So anyway, do you have like a favorite? Like, there's no like running. Or I should say, there were a few running short stories that would run like maybe a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite one, and like they made a whole book of it. It was like something about snow goons, where Calvin
Yeah.
he does like witchcraft and like he brings the snow goons to life. And I remember one. I think like I laughed out loud where like he goes out in the middle of the night and because like the snow monsters or snow goons, he like sprays them with the hose. And like you just like you don't even see him. You just see like in big letters, like off camera, relatively speaking,
Right.
it goes, "Die, snow goon, die." And I remember like maybe not peeing my pants, but I remember laughing like hysterically at that.
Yeah.
And I think like the next day's comic, it was his dad running outside in the middle of the night and like the sidewalk's all icy because he just sprayed it with water.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite
brilliant.
running like little stories within the comic. So do you have there are other ones, but
Right.
do you have a favorite like memory or something like that?
I liked the ones where I can't remember the name of the character where he kind of had the persona of the spaceman.
Spaceman Spiff.
Yes. I really enjoyed those, and I did like the kind of running gag of him like telling his dad about like applying to be a dad applying for the position of a dad or something.
Like a poll. Yeah, he's like, "You're down the polls, dad."
Yes.
Right.
Yes, which I just like, again, just as a parent, I think that is hysterical.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Chris?
Mine was always the morbid snowman scenes.
Yeah.
So I think my favorite comic was where there was a bunch of snowmen dying in various ways. One had like a sleigh going through it.
Yeah.
Another one had a tree going down the center of it.
Here.
I actually have it pulled up.
I don't know if it's gonna show on camera.
I don't know.
It's probably, if you turn your brightness down all the way.
Nah. But
That's cute. Oh, you have to look that up.
You have to look it up. But
yeah.
And then the mom's just commenting on him. And I always wondered if the mom thought, "Oh my God, I need to get this kid help." Or what. Because she never seemed happy. Like, "Wow, look at you, son. Look what you've done." It was just, she was just yelling at him.
Oh, you know what?
Great. Now I'm gonna have more crap to clean up. That's what I'm thinking. It's like more crap to clean up. Not that it's like you want to be supportive, but also the reality is like, oh dear God, this is gonna.
The neighbors are gonna call the cops on us if I leave this in here.
Right. I just thought of something. I didn't write this down, but I had a mental note of this a long time ago. Is Calvin is kind of like Stewie on Family Guy, but like 99% less evil.
Yeah.
And I think Calvin's voice, he's kind of like Stewie's voice with an American accent. There was one episode of Family Guy where Stewie talked an American accent, where actually he was talking to a therapist. Remember that one?
No.
It was probably about 5 or 10 years ago. It was Ian McKellen played the therapist.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's.
You remember that one?
Yeah, I watch very little like current TV of any kind. I'm watching whatever random thing my children are watching most of the time. So
yeah,
very, 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 very behind on TV, movies, all that stuff, unfortunately.
Yeah. I wouldn't say he sounds like Stewie in my mind, though.
I think he talks like Stewie, but with an American accent.
Like, well, sophisticated because he's because it's like pretty intelligent, so I could see where it kind of would have some sophistication to his voice, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So the $60,000 question, as it were, is everybody has like kind of like a different theory on this. Is like, is Hobbes actually like alive, or is he just like an imaginary figure that only, like he's just entirely in Calvin's head, or is he only come to life when so it's, to me, it was, and it's funny because like there's other running jokes where like he does like the transmogrifier,
yes,
like a time machine or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember there was a few jokes where like he duplicated himself. And there's like 10 Calvins running around the house.
Yeah.
Or like the gravity was reversed and he was walking on the ceiling. And his mom is like, "How did you get shoe prints on the ceiling?" I remember seeing that and I was like, okay, that means Calvin's like magic. Like this is like, like a, fantasy, and anything goes. But I don't know. Like I've read Calvin Hobbes so many times, and I'm still not sure. I think it's like 99% in Calvin's head, but it's for like, as is the case, like with cartoons, whether animated or comic strips.
Yeah.
It's just like when it's convenient to the story, he's real, and when it's not, he's imaginary.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I feel like Hobbes is 100% in Calvin's imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's Calvin's voice of reason. Like we probably shouldn't do this,
Yeah.
you know, but he chooses to ignore it anyway. But he also enables his chaos in a way. So I don't know. It could be like Calvin's adult self coming out. When I was a kid, I used to think he was something that actually came out and was realistic. But as an adult now, I'm starting to think, yeah, he was imaginary.
Yeah.
He was just a brilliant kid with no friends, apparently.
Yeah. What do you think, Amy? Was he real or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was like a figment of Calvin's imagination for sure. And I think, like you said, I think that whole him sort of being like a conscience, I think that's a good way of describing it. Yeah, I think it was all in his head, and his like what every kid's dream is, you know, is to have to have that.
That was the Robot Chicken sketch with Calvin and Hobbes. Is they show Calvin like in a rubber room, like with the straitjacket on. They're like, this kid clearly nuts.
Yeah.
You know?
And stuffed animals just next to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not moving. But and a lot of like essays and, you know, like video essays and critics and stuff say like, you know, Calvin and Hobbes represent like the id and the super ego or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Like
I was thinking that too. Just
Well, I mean, the comic strip, it was insanely philosophical. I mean,
yeah,
right.
I know, just like
very Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Calvin also inspired Lisa Simpson. How he's like this little kid, but he has like hot takes on political, maybe not political, but like philosophical.
Right.
Subjects,
the awareness
you know?
of just sort of like life awareness that most children wouldn't have. Yeah.
Ask the average second grader, they probably can't even name who the president is, or well, maybe not now, but you know, kids that young, they don't know who the Supreme Court justices are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Calvin would. Yeah.
Ask your youngest if they know anything about the Federal Reserve.
Calvin was.
Not that ever came up, but you know what I'm saying. Like he's a little kid who like has this same thing with like South Park, Lisa Simpson, Stewie on Family Guy.
Yeah.
You know, other things that, you know, later 20th, early 21st century animation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm thinking about like Manny from Modern Family too, how he's like way more aware of things or like fashions that, you know, wanting to look like, Bing Crosby. Like Bing Crosby. Season. It's like, why do you know who Bing Crosby is? You're like 10, you know?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's another thing about, I mean, reading this as an adult versus reading it as a kid is his teacher was Miss Wormwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember
that like a hallucinogen or something?
Oh, the wormwood?
Yeah.
I don't know. What is wormwood? It's some sort of herb.
I thought it was like some witchcraft thing.
Oh, I should ask my dad. He's like an expert on that. I'm not kidding.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but I'll inquire.
I like Miss Krabappel. Maybe it's kind of a play on words. I don't know, but she's like a burnt out. And I remember as a kid thinking, God, that teacher is so mean. And now I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, she was a teacher.
Yeah, she's also like 80 or 90 years old.
She's been doing it a long time. At that point, she's just
time to retire.
Although I could relate to that as a kid, because I remember my first grade teacher, she had like white hair and she seemed like she was like 80 years old to me.
Right.
I have no idea how old she actually was.
She's probably just like 50 and just went like hair went white early or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that a lot.
I'm saying like she actually looked old, you know, like in the face and everything.
Yeah, now, but I bet now you'd be like, she's not that old.
Right. Well, like Wilford Brimley, a tangent, who was in Cocoon and stuff, looked like he was 80 when he was in Cocoon, and he like only recently passed away in the last like 5 or 7 years or something. He was like 85. I was like, wasn't he 85 in like 1982? That generation, you know, just
we reviewed The Thing in October, and
The Thing, which is like 1982.
He was like what in his 50s, but he looked 70 or something.
But he didn't have the mustache, so you only recognized his voice.
It was diabetes. So
the diabetes.
Look at the Golden Girls. Like,
true. Yes.
I think they were like in their 50s when they made that show, but as a kid, I always thought they were like in their 70s. Like they seemed like senior citizens to me.
Yeah, they were only in their 50s, but
yeah,
it was just a different era. So Miss Wormwood, she might have only been 50.
Yeah,
I don't know.
For all we know.
Do you ever watch Vsauce? You know what Vsauce is on YouTube? He's one of the big science YouTubers.
No.
He did a video about a year or two ago about how like people used to look older. And it was mostly, it's like based on like they're wearing old clothes. So they just look older.
Yeah.
And they show this one guy who's like a science teacher, and they show his, yearbook, and he has like those horn rimmed glasses from like the 50s, and like, so for every year from like the 70s to the 90s, he wore the exact same outfit.
Yeah.
And it's like, he always looked like he was like in his 60s for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's
got, that Wilford Brimley power.
Wow, we're going pretty long. This might be a record episode.
Oh, nice.
Do you have any other topics or notes you want to discuss?
I mean, I think what I was just most fascinated by was the lack of merchandising and how that really impacted, I think, people's familiarity with things. And now it's like, well, that's why Garfield was like so big, is because Garfield was not only the newspaper, but he had a Saturday morning cartoon. There was like an insane amount of plush stuffies, whatever you want to call it. We stayed at the Garfield suite when I turned 12 at the hotel. They had like the Embassy Suites had a whole suite that was like Garfield sheets and Garfield comforter.
Oh, I would have loved that.
And like, it's just so amazing that he, and Steven Spielberg approached him and said, like, I want to license, Calvin Hobbes for a movie. And he said he didn't even meet with him. He didn't even accept the meeting. So it's just really fascinating that how much different he is compared to a lot of other popular comics during that time, compared to, Jim Davis, allegedly just wanted to like rake in as much cash as possible. And Watterson's the exact opposite. I just find that really fascinating.
I think this could be a subject. This should be like a college debate series or something.
Yeah,
because like that documentary that we watched, they mentioned that, and I think it's kind of apples and oranges to compare Garfield to Calvin and Hobbes, because Garfield is like clearly just a zany, kind of, I don't say lowbrow, but it's just like a zany comic. Like, it's inherently, it's almost like that Saturday morning cartoon vibe, where Calvin and Hobbes, it's like, again, kind of like Simpsons or South Park, like this more intellectual thing. And it's like, or like, think of the Charlie Brown specials. Like, I'm sure maybe you did a podcast on it when the original Charlie Brown Christmas special, Charles Schultz had like final say on everything, like no laugh track. The kids had to be voiced by kids. They had jazz music instead of pop music. Yeah. And, like Charlie Brown was licensed to death, but I don't think I don't think the Charlie Brown IP ever got cheapened. Yeah. Not my opinion. I mean,
I think that's definitely one of the better. Yeah. I don't think I've seen Charlie Brown peeing on so that's good.
Those bumper stickers were everywhere in Florida, and it would be like peeing on Ford, peeing on Florida State University. And I legitimately thought they were actually put out by the makers. It was the author. So that guy got a rough break there because he had nothing to do with it.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They were such a huge part of like
I know,
teens.
They were saying that document, or Phil Edwards, he was saying like the syndicate, Universal Syndicate or whatever, was like urging him to monetize or merch Calvin and Hobbes so that they could go after the bootleggers. Yeah. So it's like you have to have like legit merch in order to go after bootleggers, or I don't know how it works, but
I
don't know. It's so weird, but
really intriguing. Yeah.
I never even found out that he wasn't part of it until much later. So
You know what always happens whenever we do these episodes? As soon as we wrap, I'm like, oh, I forgot to talk about that. So like I always like go over my notes. I'm trying to think.
Oh, I made a note. Susie Durkins was always portrayed as being such a little brat in that comic. And she deserved better. She was very smart.
Yeah.
And Calvin was always obsessed with her, but he like went between like crushing on her, being mean to her, pretending she was an alien, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's how like real little kids are, is like kindergartners, first graders, boys and girls. Like they hate each other, but they hate each other one day and they love each other the next day.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
they're portrayed in like media in particular.
Yeah. Well, it also made me wonder because was a lot of like comics about little boys or like a male cat adventures. I was thinking to myself, like, I probably would have really liked if there was a cartoon, and maybe this exists and I just don't know which one it is, but like of a little girl who does all this crazy stuff, you know, that plays with dinosaurs and has a stuffed tiger that she goes down the hill in a wagon in a radio flyer with. I would have really loved that. Unconsciously, probably not realizing, like, oh, it's a girl, that's amazing, you know, good representation. I wouldn't have been thinking that, but I think it would have been really cool if there had been that, because again, those were characters I felt like I could relate to a lot more as a kid, instead of like Kathy or, you know,
that's what I was going to say.
Or, you know, because they're moms or like working women, or, you know, and that's not, you know, was not an interest of mine as a, you know, 10-year-old kid.
No, the only girl comic I really remember is Kathy, and like every other
she was an adult,
comic.
yeah.
Other comic was her getting into a bathing suit and hating how she looked in the bathing suit, or she was on a diet.
I mean,
something like that.
I guess you could say like Peanuts. Like it's called, the name of the strip is Peanuts and not Charlie Brown, because there was like this huge cast of characters. So they would show Lucy and Sally and Violet and some of the other girls, Frida, once in a while. But like Charlie Brown was clearly like the main character, so it's like he didn't really get to go deep into the characters, like these side characters. Yeah, but you know, it's like Charlie Brown, Linus, Lucy, Snoopy, obviously. Yeah, I thought they should have gave Snoopy a girlfriend.
Yeah.
What if there was a, you know, like what if Snoopy had like a female interest
that looked just like him? She'd probably just be another female beagle, right?
Funny.
Snoopy was kind of I mean, I bet you Snoopy was the inspiration or partially for Calvin. Like you have a boy, like at least like he's like a real dog, but like he acts nothing like a dog, you know. Yeah, it's kind of like he's again kind of like Family Guy. Like I'm sure Brian from Family Guy is inspired by that. It's like this.
Oh, for sure. At least the way he looks is inspired.
What do they call it? Anthropomorphic. When animals have human characteristics or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. Anthropomorphic. I can't even say it.
I did a podcast episode on, so they always have like white gloves on and sneakers, and
Yep.
You know, Opus Clip is going to grab this as a clip, and then we're going to get comments like, "You idiot! It's actually pronounced." Blah.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
How do you not know how you say that?
Yeah.
This seems like a good place to end. Unless anybody has something more.
No, I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna wrap it up.
We'll put links to all of Amy's stuff in the description. And we're going to do an interview with her, and hopefully she's going to interview us. Yes. Maybe not at the same time. Yeah. So like this crossover, you know, because we're both nostalgia podcasters, but like in different formats or whatever. I don't know the word I'm looking for. Yeah. But anyways, we're going very long. So let's wrap up this one up, and we'll see you real soon. We always end with smell you later.
See you on the flip side.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Ski later, my kids. So ski later. I hope you enjoyed my guest spot on the fantastic show, the His and Hers Gen X podcast. Chad and Cristina were so easy to talk to and are clearly passionate about what makes Gen X such a memorable collective group of people. You can find more information about their show in the show notes. If you want to learn more about this podcast, check out merch, visit my blog, send me a message, and so much more, visit popcultureretrospective.com. Also, don't forget to check out the Q106.5 app, available for both iPhone and Android users. You can listen to 80s and 90s music all day long, as well as check out other fellow retro-inspired podcasts. Here is a bit more info on the super cool app that yours truly is a part of.
Discover the legendary Q106.5 in your car, on your smart speaker, on your phone. Browse to Q1065.com. 80s, 90s. This is a radio station with a vibe. Download our app or listen online. Search at Q1065 Radio on social media. The Q is your favorite radio station. Discover Q106.5 and hear the 80s and 90s hits on the radio station with personality. Q106.5.
I hope you'll join me for the next episode of the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast, where we will take a look back at yet another fascinating facet of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s in memory of my sister. Until then, be kind, be safe, and hold on to your memories.
Thank you for tuning in to my mama's podcast and the memories of Auntie Rebecca.